Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson Smith. I'll be providing our commentary for the duration of tonight's coverage. We're broadcasting from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. I'm joined tonight, of course, by Stephen Young, who is running the technical aspects of our show. Adam Bernstein is out doing double duty, manning the tracking cameras and doing some still photography. And our other ace photographer, Michael Kane, also doing some still photography for us as well. If you're not already following them on X, be sure to do so for photos from tonight's mission as well as plenty of other photographic goodies that they have over there. Their handles beneath their profile pictures. We'll come back to that a little bit later as well. We also have support from our friend Chuck Briggs, providing this perspective of Space Launch Complex 40 over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. At the center of your screen, you see the Falcon 9 rocket as per usual, but tonight, a particular new addition, as we've been talking over the last several weeks, couple of months, SpaceX has been building section by section that crew and cargo support tower, and yesterday they hoisted up, attached, and now have tonight lit up the new crew access arm. Another key piece of being able to support Dragon missions from Pad 40, replicating the ability that they have over at Launch Complex 39A here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. We'll talk much more about those capabilities as we go along with tonight's broadcast. We are T-minus 1 hour, 2 minutes, 10 seconds and counting to the launch of the 80th orbital launch for SpaceX of the year. Mission Starlink Group 6-27. This will also be the 33rd dedicated mission launching SpaceX's upgraded Starlink V2 mini satellites. 23 are on board this Falcon 9 rocket. Currently, SpaceX is targeting a T0 liftoff time of 12:05 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. For our viewers joining from around the world, that's 05:05 UTC. If you'd like to help support our coverage of the space program, there's a quick and easy way to do that if you hit the like button. If you're not already, subscribe to Spaceflight Now's YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button as well, and be sure to ring the notification bell so you're alerted whenever we go live and we post videos here on the channel. Naturally, we can't do these broadcasts without the support of wonderful viewers like you and our fabulous channel members. So thanks to everyone who's made a contribution to help fund our coverage. Channel members have access to discounts at our online shop. That's shop.spaceflightnow.com, as well as access to member-only videos and the ability to stream all of our Cape Side launches in 4K. If you want to join in and be a part of the conversation about this launch or ask any other questions about spaceflight activities, you can use the YouTube Super Chat feature. It's a great way to join in the conversation as well as to support what we do here at Spaceflight Now. And of course, if your question or comment is appropriate to be read on the show, I'd love to bring you into the conversation. We're now T-minus 1 hour, 13 seconds and counting to liftoff. About 20 minutes or so from now, the launch director would give the go for the start of propellant load for tonight's launch. If you happen to not have been with us for one of the last several recent missions, SpaceX is not providing mission audio ahead of the final 5 minutes of the count, so while we will not hear that call for the start of propellant load, we do have extensive experience of covering these missions, and we will provide you with the visual clues and updates that we are tracking as we get closer to the start of fueling and once fueling is underway. SpaceX is running the countdown from its Hangar X site here at the Kennedy Space Center. The base where they refurbish their Falcon boosters to prepare them for future flights. SpaceX also has support for this launch, in part from the control room at their headquarters in Hawthorne, California. Again, tonight's launch is targeting liftoff at 12:05 a.m. Eastern. That's 05:05 UTC. They do have 6 additional backup opportunities overnight from 12:56 a.m. until 2:59 a.m., just shy of 3 o'clock here on the East Coast. If for whatever reason all of those don't pan out, SpaceX has 8 backup opportunities during a window from 11:17 p.m. until 2:59 a.m. overnight tomorrow. Want to note in this shot from the press side of the Falcon 9 rocket, no, the bottom of the vehicle is not invisible. There is some fog, though, that is rolling across the Cape this evening. So it is obscuring the bottom of the rocket a little bit. But once engine ignition happens, should light it up pretty nicely. So just a point of note for that. But as you can see in this wider shot, just getting a little pop of light there from around the lightning protection towers surrounding Pad 40. You can really only see the rocket from this vantage point by the fact that the upper stage, the second stage of the Falcon 9, is flying for the first time, as it always does. And so it is pristine white. The payload fairings got a little bit of character on them. They're going for a reuse flight, as is the booster. This particular booster, tail number B1073, going for its 11th launch tonight. We'll have more on its history coming up as we get closer to liftoff. Weather tonight, though, just about as good as it gets. If you ignore the fog, it's been a pretty clear day here on the Atlantic coast of Florida. Coming into tonight's launch attempt, the 45th Weather Squadron forecast better than 95% favorable weather for liftoff during tonight's window. The only concern would be a little bit of cumulus cloud action. If needed, the backup launch opportunity for tomorrow is roughly the same. 95% favorable launch conditions, again with cumulus clouds being the only watch item. A T-minus 56 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. As we are progressing through the count, let's go ahead, talk about the countdown timeline, where we're going to be looking forward to as we continue to get closer to the liftoff of this 80th mission for SpaceX this year. T-minus 38 minutes. Again, that is when the launch director would give the results of the go, no go poll for the start of propellant load. Again, we will not hear that, but just as a marker in time, that's when that will happen. Assuming that the go is given for a propellant load, that will start at T-minus 35 minutes. It begins with rocket-grade kerosene, or RP-1, being loaded onto both the first and second stages of the Falcon 9 rocket. At the same time, liquid oxygen will also be pumped aboard the first stage. At T-minus 16 minutes, liquid oxygen will start flowing onto the second stage of the Falcon 9. At about T-minus 20 minutes, 20 seconds, we'll see the so-called big vent from the strong back at the launch pad, marker that the feed lines are chilled and that fueling is moving along on schedule. At T-minus 7 minutes, the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines will get underway. That involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps. It's a key step because it helps protect the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes before launch, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. Then at T-minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strong back retract from the Falcon 9 rocket. It begins with the clamp arms opening up underneath the payload fairings, and then it will tilt back about 1.5 degrees and stay in that spot until liftoff. At that point, the strong back will tilt back much more quickly, clearing the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. About 2 minutes out, LOX should be completely loaded onto the Falcon 9. At that point, it will be fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellants. In the final 60 seconds, the propellant tanks will be brought up to flight pressure. The control of the countdown will be handed over from the ground sequencer, the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The SpaceX launch director will give their go for liftoff at about 45 seconds out. The engine ignition command will be issued at T-minus 3 seconds. And then, of course, if all 9 engines are healthy and ignite, the flight computer will give the command for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 for liftoff at T0, currently targeting, again, 12:05 a.m. Now T-minus 50 minutes, 15 seconds and counting. Want to thank Sam Domash for a $2 super chat. Really appreciate the support, Sam. Ask, do you know the trajectory? It's a good question. The answer is yes. So let's go ahead and chat about it now, shall we? Let's talk a little trajectory for tonight's mission. The Falcon 9 will be lifting off from the pad at Slick 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. It'll be flying in a southeast trajectory toward the Caribbean. Following stage separation, the first stage will land on one of SpaceX's 3 drone ships. Tonight, they're using Just Read the Instructions. The upper stage will continue on with the Starlink satellites after stage separation. The fairing halves will jettison just a bit downrange of the map you see here. SpaceX will use, of course, one of its 2 East Coast recovery ships to scoop up the fairing halves. Tonight, they're using Bob. It, along with the other recovery ship, Doug, named after former NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley, the duo that flew aboard the Demo 2 mission back in May of 2020. You might be wondering, well, what does that recovery process look like? Well, fortunately, recently SpaceX shared this image of what that recovery process looks like in action. This is the recovery from the Starlink 6-26 mission. That particular fairing that you see it scooping up out of the ocean was going for its 13th mission to date. So like its first stage booster, SpaceX makes a point to reuse these payload fairings as much as it makes sense for their particular life. And like with the first stage boosters, they go and do an analysis of any particular impact it had from the mission and look to see what it can support moving forward and if it can fly again. Of course, reuse is one of the cornerstones of SpaceX's business model. So we'll fly them as much as possible. T-minus 47 minutes, 42 seconds and counting. I want to also welcome Jeff Groves to channel membership, joining at the pad leader level. Really appreciate you joining us there, Jeff. Jeff, like our other channel members, now has access to discounts at our online shop, shop.spaceflightnow.com, as well as member-only videos and access to the 4K streams of all of our launches from the Cape. So thanks for supporting us here, Jeff. Really appreciate it. And while we certainly appreciate channel members and those who donate and join the conversation through the YouTube Super Chat feature, there's another great way to support us just by hitting the like button. And of course, being with us tonight, as we have more than 2,600 of you already in the stream with us. So thanks to everyone for being here on a late work night, late school night. And hopefully there will be a launch at the end of it for all of us. Now T-minus 46 minutes, 26 seconds and counting. Now T-minus 45 minutes, 40 seconds and counting. We're just about 7.5 minutes away from the point at which the SpaceX launch director will give the call for the start of propellant load. Again, we won't hear that, but that is when that milestone will be coming up. Want to welcome a couple other new channel members. Gene Storm joining at the pad leader level and Rita Lloyd joining at the mission specialist level. Really appreciate the both of you for your support and hope you enjoy the perks of channel membership, including being able to watch this launch in 4K. So you can go ahead and throw that up on your big screen at home and enjoy a nice midnight launch from SpaceX. Also want to thank Laura P. Tor for a $10 super chat. Really appreciate that, Laura. Says, thanks for the great coverage and all the hard work you guys do to make it happen. Well, it's support from folks like yourselves, Laura, and our wonderful channel members like Gene and Rita, who just joined alongside Jeff Groves for helping power what we do. So thanks to all of you for allowing us to do what we do. Really appreciate it. And to our fantastic moderators in the live chat, Stephanie B and Astro Joe, for helping to keep the conversation moving, keep things kosher in the live chat. Really appreciate all of you guys for everything you do to help keep us going here. And speaking of keeping going, this will be the 80th orbital launch for SpaceX in 2023. I want to talk about some of the other mission stats that will come to fruition once this launch has come upon us. T-minus 42 minutes, 6 seconds and counting. Apologies for the pause. We were talking about some possible condensation on one of our lenses and just making sure that that is cleared up ahead of liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket. Of course, we work hard to make sure these streams look as clean and pristine as possible, so do take moments here and there just to make sure everything is on track behind the scenes as well as in front of the camera too. T-minus 41 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. As I alluded to just a moment ago, I want to talk about those mission stats once this launches in the books. Before we jump right into it, though, do want to thank a new channel member that popped in here during the pause, Jeffrey Luster, joining at the pad leader level. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. Really appreciate that. And then in quick succession, upgraded membership to the mission specialist level. So thank you so much, Jeffrey, for joining and supporting us at that level. Really, really appreciate that. So once Starlink 6-27 launches, this will have been the 11th flight of this particular Falcon 9 first stage booster, 1073. This will be the 270th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 76th Falcon 9 launch of 2023, the 214th Falcon booster reflight, or the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This will be, as I had mentioned, the 80th SpaceX orbital launch of 2023. This will be SpaceX's 90th orbital launch in the last 365 days. Its 153rd orbital launch from Pad 40, the 208th overall launch from Pad 40, and it will be the 61st orbital launch from Cape Canaveral in this calendar year. That includes missions from both Cape Canaveral Space Force Station as well as here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Now T-minus 39 minutes and counting. About a minute away from the launch director making the call on the start of propellant load. Comes up at T-minus 38 minutes. Following that at T-minus 35 minutes, if the go has in fact been given, we'll see both RP1 being loaded onto the first and second stage, as well as liquid oxygen being loaded onto the first stage. As we mentioned, this has also been a very busy couple of days for SpaceX, as they've been hoisting the new crew access arm into place here. This is a time-lapse video that our Adam Bernstein shot from yesterday as they brought that crew access arm up into place. A combination of cranes and very brave soul on a cherry picker going far higher than I would ever deign to think comfortable. Although as someone who's afraid of heights, probably wouldn't go higher than about 20 feet in a cherry picker, but that's just me. As you can see, this was a fairly succinct operation despite a decent amount of breeze yesterday. But they were able to get it propped up, put in place, secured. And there were a number of glamour shots that SpaceX got of the crew access arm. We'll show those to you in a minute once this time lapse is done. This, of course, much more sped up. This time lapse is about 2-ish minutes in totality, but as you can tell by the changing light dynamics, this was an operation that took several hours over the course of yesterday afternoon. Spaceflight now is the only news crew on scene as the crew access arm was being hoisted into place. Wanted to make sure to be able to capture the moment and be able to bring it to you. If you want to go ahead and watch just a succinct version of this time lapse, we do have that available here on YouTube right now. That's on our YouTube Shorts feed. Also have a little bit of an explainer video about the crew access arm that's on our channel as well. You can check that out right now. Or you could wait till after this launch happens. Go back and watch it at your leisure. This is a photo that SpaceX shared from shortly after the hoisting operation took place. This photo taken just before sunset yesterday. You can see the crane cable there in the middle of the crew access arm. And then earlier this evening, they took a couple of other twilight shots. Once the crane had been brought down and cleared, you can see the crew access arm as it's folded up against the body of the tower there, as it is currently. Show you one more shot here of it up close. Sources tell Spaceflight now that, assuming everything is in place for this tower, it'll be first used to support the Axiom 3 or AX-3 private astronaut mission to the International Space Station. That mission set to come up in the middle of January of next year. Reason being for that is AX-3 runs smack dab schedule-wise into the Intuitive Machines 1 mission that will send a Nova C lander to the moon's south pole. That mission set for launch no earlier than January 12th, and Intuitive Machines only has a launch window of a handful of days, really. Each month, they have between about 3 and 6 days during which they are able to launch to the moon. T-minus 34 minutes, 18 seconds and counting. We do have confirmation from SpaceX that propellant load has begun, and so SpaceX is committed to a 12:05 liftoff time for the Starlink 6-27 mission. So if for some reason at this point they are not able to launch, they would go ahead and stand down for this evening's launch attempt and go for one of the 8 backup opportunities tomorrow. But as I mentioned earlier, weather looking just about as good as it gets for tonight, with greater than 95% favorable liftoff weather. This view again from Chuck Briggs, a different vantage point from our cameras here at the press site, but it gives you a nice perspective from a little bit of a distance of what the support tower with its new crew access arm looks like. Stood up next to the Falcon 9 rocket. Soon we'll see a Falcon 9 with a Dragon on top of it. As soon as potentially January. Of course, we'll have much more on the AX-3 private astronaut mission as we get closer to the launch of that to the International Space Station. Lots to come between now and then, though. Make it all possible. We're very appreciative of channel members like Douglas Gunn, who just joined us at the pad leader level. So thank you so much, Douglas. Really appreciate your support. Now T-minus 30 minutes, 32 seconds and counting. Taking a look over at pad 39A, because as SpaceX prepares to launch this particular Falcon 9 mission here at pad 40 on the right-hand side of your screen, over at pad 39A, they are also gearing up for another Falcon 9 launch later this week. On the 9th, they will be launching the CRS, or Commercial Resupply Services mission, to the International Space Station. This will be SpaceX's 29th such mission to the ISS, sending up cargo and crew, or excuse me, cargo and science, not crew this time, cargo and science up to the orbiting outpost. We're expecting the Falcon 9 rocket supporting that mission to roll out to the pad there later on this evening. So we're keeping a close eye on that. We'll let you know when that roll operation does in fact begin. But you see there at pad 39A the crew access arm that has been used pretty continuously since the Demo 2 mission launched back in 2020. That is out and extended and ready to receive the Falcon 9 once it arrives at the pad. A T minus 28 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. Want to talk a little bit about the parts of the rocket that make up the Falcon 9 as the fog continues to roll in. We're seeing it less and less, so before it completely vanishes, we'll go ahead and break down the launch vehicle for you, but do want to note that helium loading is also now underway into the pressure vessels on the first stage. Helium is used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. And also want to thank Soldiers for Life Christian Ministries for joining channel membership at the launch director level. Really appreciate you supporting us at that level, soldiers. Thank you so much for that. And of course, a quick and easy way to support that's also free is just by hitting the like button. So thanks to all nearly 3,700 of you who are joining us live. Hitting the like button allows the YouTube algorithm to do its thing and allow more folks to find our live coverage, as we are now less than 30 minutes to liftoff. But as I mentioned, the fog is continuing to thicken up. So before we're just left with some payload fairings, let's talk about this 70-meter tall Falcon 9 rocket. Has a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. Most of it made up by the first stage, which is practically impossible to see through the fog at this point. Feeling a bit like Vandenberg right now. But the first stage makes up about 2/3 of the vehicle. This particular booster has flown 10 times before, going for its 11th tonight, tail number 1073. At the base of the first stage are the 9 Merlin engines, which burn rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen, producing 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Around the engine compartment are the black carbon fiber landing legs that will be used to land the first stage on the drone ship just to read the instructions about 8.5 minutes into flight. Above the first stage is the inner stage. It's a composite structure consisting of an aluminum honeycomb core surrounded by carbon fiber. That image on the right-hand side of the screen, you see those deployable hypersonic grid fins. These are titanium winglets that provide stability and steering as the Falcon 9 comes back through the atmosphere. Heads down toward the drone ship like a big old dart. At the top of the inner stage are 3 mechanical latches that attach to the second stage. The first stage main engine cutoff, high-pressure helium is used to release those latches, and 4 pneumatic pushers ensure a clean separation. The second stage engine nozzle is also safely housed inside the inner stage adapter until stage separation. Speaking of that second stage, the upper stage is powered by a single modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine or MVAC engine. It's equipped with a large nozzle optimized for burns in the vacuum of space and produces more than 200,000 pounds of thrust. It'll be fired twice on today's flight to place the 23 Starlink satellites into their intended orbit. The MVAC engine burns the same propellant mix, that is RP1 and LOX, same as the first stage. This will ignite a third time after the deployment of the Starlink satellites for a deorbit burn, driving the upper stage back into the atmosphere while it will burn up, and it helps eliminate the risk for any unnecessary space debris. And finally, up top are the payload fairings that house the 23 Starlink satellites. The fairings are made up of a carbon composite, stand 13.1 meters or 43 feet tall, and they're 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. And as with previous missions, the fairing halves will be recovered by the recovery ship Bob, brought back to Port Canaveral, where they will be, like the first stage, refurbished and turned around for reuse on a future flight. Now T-minus 24 minutes, 7 seconds and counting. At this point, cryogenic helium is now being loaded onto the storage tanks on the second stage of the Falcon 9. just a little over 3 minutes away from the point at which we'll see the so-called big vent, or at least we would normally. We'll see how much we can actually see with this layer of fog tonight. You can tell by the black line that reaches more than halfway up the rocket that it's getting fairly thick out there as far as visibility. Hopefully with the spotlights, though, out there, they'll be able to see a little bit of the big vent. It should be high up enough that we'll be able to spot it. Fortunately, though, we do have this side view from our friend Chuck Briggs, so that should allow us to see the big vent if we can't spot it from here at the press site. Fortunate enough to have multiple angles on the Falcon 9 rocket, so we'll be able to see this one way or the other. Now T-minus 22 minutes, 37 seconds and counting to liftoff. I want to thank Alan Gable, one of our regular members, joining us again for coverage tonight with a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Alan. Really, really appreciate that. And want to also welcome Joshua Damhan. Apologies, Joshua, if I mispronounced your last name, but thanks so much for joining us with channel membership at the pad leader level. Really appreciate the support. As we work to increasingly make these broadcasts better and better for all of you, channel membership as well as the YouTube super chats allow us to have more and better equipment to improve the technical capabilities we have here at Spaceflight now. So thank you to all of you who are helping us to get just a little bit better one day at a time. Can't do this without you, so thank you so much. Now T-minus 21 minutes, 21 seconds and counting. We're just about a minute away from the start of the big vent there. As you can see from Chuck Briggs' camera, side view of the Falcon 9 rocket. Now T-minus 20 minutes, 18 seconds and counting. You see the big event beginning. Fortunately, it is above the fog line, so we're actually seeing it quite well here. No worries on that. Here it is from another angle from Chuck Briggs. And our wide camera here, you can still see the line of fog along the bottom of pad 40 as the vapor from the strong back continues to billow out as the feed lines are chilled. Next milestone coming up will be T-minus 16 minutes when LOX loading begins on the Falcon 9's second stage. Venting from the strong back will conclude about 45-30 seconds before that happens. Now T minus 18 minutes, 2 seconds, and counting. As I mentioned, this will be SpaceX's 80th orbital launch of calendar year 2023. Here's a bar graph snapshot of its total launches to date, starting back in 2010, going up to just before this launch tonight, or I guess really just in the technical morning hours of Wednesday, November 8th here on the East Coast. On board the vehicle will be, of course, the 23 Starlink V2 mini satellites. The photo in the center of your screen was taken before another Starlink launch. This will be the 33rd launch of these V2 minis, and it will be the 53rd Starlink launch in 2023. Each of these V2 minis weighs about 1,760 pounds or 800 kilograms. After the solar panels unfurl, each has a wingspan of about 100 feet or 30 meters. They use argon Hall thrusters for in-orbit maneuvers and were built in Redmond, Washington, near Seattle. If you want to know what they look like when they're on orbit, this is a photo from another satellite as the big vent just wrapping up, T minus 16 minutes, 23 seconds and counting. This photo of a Starlink V2 mini from Australian company HEO Robotics that was snapped earlier this year. They claim this was the first direct observation of a Starlink V2 mini. A little bit grainy, but you can see the overall shape of the Starlink with the two solar panels extending from the main body of the satellite. Now T minus 15 minutes, 48 seconds and counting. And of course, LOX loading on the second stage has been going for about 30 seconds or so at this point in time. The next milestone on the docket for fueling will be the 9 Merlin engines chill down. Starts at T minus 7 minutes. Now T minus 11 minutes, 21 seconds and counting. As tends to be the case, we've got a few people who were not with us when we talked about trajectory before, so let's go ahead and re-rack and talk about where this particular rocket is going to fly once it leaves the pad here. So once the Falcon 9 supporting the Starlink 6-27 mission leaves from pad 40 here at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, it will fly in a southeast trajectory toward the Caribbean. Following stage separation, the first stage will land on one of 3 of SpaceX's drone ships tonight. They're using Just Read the Instructions. The upper stage will continue on with the Starlink satellites. The fairing halves will jettison just a bit downrange of the map you see here on your screen. SpaceX using the recovery vessel Bob to scoop up the fairing halves. If you want to see a photo again of what that looks like, here is a picture from SpaceX of the drone, or excuse me, of the recovery vessel operation. You can see there already on Bob one of those payload fairings as it uses that crane arm there to scoop up another fairing half. That one, the company says, made its 13th flight just recently. Now T-minus 9 minutes, 33 seconds and counting to lift off of this mission, the 80th orbital launch for SpaceX Starlink 6-27. And as we come into the last less than 9.5 minutes to flight, want to thank a couple of folks for some very generous super chat donations. Donna Wilson for your $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Donna, for supporting us with a very excited pear emoji with a goal on it. Thank you so much for the support. As well as to Sean Reynolds, also with a $20 super chat, saying watching from the North Port in Florida. Really appreciate the both of you helping to chip in for our coverage at that level. Thank you both so much. And to the more than 7,000 of you who are joining us this evening, glad you could take part of your Tuesday night into chipping into Wednesday morning to be with us for our live launch coverage. If you haven't already, there's a quick and easy way to help support what we do. Just hit the like button, and it will allow more people to find this live stream with the YouTube algorithm doing its thing. T-minus 7 minutes, 42 seconds and counting. As Stephen Young was drawing my attention to just off mic here, you can see both how still of a night it is as well as how clear it is here, with the vapor just swirling around, sort of enveloping the Falcon 9 rocket as fueling continues on this vehicle. Now coming up on the engine chill down. That'll start in about 5 seconds. Want to thank Amo for a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Amo. Says, thank you for keeping North Florida nerds and their kids engaged. Well, we are more than happy to do so, Amo. And thank you for helping to support our coverage and allowing us to all embrace our inner space nerd. Really appreciate it. Now T-minus 6 minutes, 27 seconds and counting. Really want to thank Soldiers for Christian Life for another super chat donation, this time coming in with a $50 super chat. Thank you so much for such a generous super chat donation, Soldiers. Really appreciate that. Says, love this channel, and well, we love all of you who are helping to support our coverage and allow us to do what we do. Those as well, like Stephen Ross, also chipping in with a $20 super chat. Very generous. Thank you so much, Stephen. Says, thank you for everything you do. Thank you for supporting us here. And to Cheers GXP for $3 super chat donation with a, looks like a very sassy snapping lemon emoji. Thank you so much. And while we certainly very much appreciate all of the super chats here that will allow us to move closer to being able to do some equipment upgrades and improve the technical prowess of these live streams, just hitting the like button also helps us reach more people and spread this coverage to more folks on a late Tuesday night. And it's free to do so. You can help more people see a launch this evening. Now less than 5 minutes to liftoff. We're getting some sounds and sights from SpaceX here. So from time to time you may hear me pause just to allow you all to hear what we're hearing. The SpaceX mission audio.
Strong back retract.
Such as that. T-minus 4 minutes, 12 seconds and counting. Strong back retract now beginning. Do want to note for a bit of housekeeping. You see our countdown clock at 4 minutes, 2 seconds and counting. A little bit off from SpaceX's feed there. Reason for that is our countdown clock is in real time and SpaceX is on just a little bit of a delay there. You can see those clamp arms opening up underneath the Falcon 9 rocket. Getting a different view of that new crew access arm there on the support tower by the rocket. From this vantage point, you can see the brace and the hinge from where the crew access arm is attached. Here's another vantage point on that. The crew access arm running pretty much straight away from the camera as we see it, but you really see the fog that we were talking about earlier kind of enveloping the scene as we are now just a little over 3 minutes away from liftoff.
Stage 1 lock slide complete.
Hear that call out for stage 1 liquid oxygen loading wrapping up as fueling is nearly finished as we're just about 2.5 minutes to liftoff. About a minute from now, we'll hear the call out that LOX loading is complete on the second stage. So be sure to listen in for that. They're T-minus 2 minutes and counting.
Stage 2 lock slide complete.
You hear the call out that stage 2 LOX loading is complete. The Falcon 9 is now fully fueled with 1 million pounds of propellant. We do have our friend Pete Carsons, who's also going to be helping us out with tracking views this evening. So we'll be shuffling between Pete and Chuck and Adam as we look to bring
Gas
you
launch
the
closeouts.
very best views of the Falcon 9 as it climbs skyward, sending up SpaceX's 80th orbital launch of the year, just over a minute away. I know we've gotten a few super chats and channel members coming in. We'll come back to those a little bit after liftoff, but want to keep the focus for the moment here on
Vehicle is in startup.
Falcon 9 as you're in startup now, T-minus 46 seconds and counting. Should hear the launch director give the final go for liftoff in just moments.
SpaceX launch director, go for launch.
And there you hear that call out. Now just over 30 seconds away from liftoff here. As SpaceX prepares for the latest mission from its workhorse pad, Slick 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, now just over 15 seconds away. In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. And liftoff. Lining up the fog across Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, the Falcon 9 has cleared the lightning towers, climbing skyward, carrying 23 Starlink satellites on board for the Starlink 6-27 mission. Now T plus 30 seconds into flight. Seeing the fire of those Merlin engines from Chuck Briggs' camera. Piercing through some cloud cover. See this from Pete Carson's perspective. As the Falcon 9 continues to climb. Now just about a minute into flight. This is a view from Adam Bernstein's camera. Hear the call out, the vehicle is supersonic, traveling faster than the speed of sound. Coming up on the point at which the rocket will pass through max Q. A call out for max Q, the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Now about a minute and a half into flight, getting some great tracking views from our team here. Hear the call out for chill down as the second stage is being thermally conditioned for the Merlin vacuum engine to ignite. Now T plus 1 minute, 53 seconds into this mission. Seeing the view from the press site here. This is Pete Carson's camera. Now a little over 2 minutes into flight. We're approaching main engine cutoff, or MECO, the point at which the Merlin engines will shut down, followed shortly thereafter by stage separation and ignition of the upper stage. Jettison of the payload fairings will follow shortly. Some great colors here from Pete Carson's tracking camera from MaxQ Productions. There you see main engine cutoff, stage separation. And there you see the Merlin vacuum engine coming to life. And there you see those sequences happening in a slight delay on the SpaceX feed. As the winglets start to deploy, as the first stage makes its journey back down slowly but surely down to the drone ship. Just read the instructions. You see those payload fairings falling away in Pete Carson's perspective. You'll see those in the delay there. There you go. On the SpaceX feed on the right-hand side of your screen. I can still see a little bit of them glinting as they continue to fall down toward the Atlantic Ocean. The Falcon 9's second stage continuing on in flight. Now T plus 30, or excuse me, 3 minutes, 43 seconds and counting. Now coming up on 4 minutes into flight here. The next major milestone will be the first stage entry burn. That'll start at T plus 6 minutes, 6 seconds. That burn lasting 24 seconds in total. Not a terribly long burn, but it will greatly slow down that first stage as it makes its way down toward the drone ship. Just read the instructions. And in Pete's tracking camera, you may notice those white dots that are passing by. It is a very clear night here in Florida. Now that we're past the fog, you're seeing some of those stars going by in view. Now 5 minutes into flight, less than a minute away from the start of the first stage entry burn beginning. On the right-hand side of your screen, you're seeing those two boxes from the SpaceX feed. The bottom right has the second stage Merlin vacuum engine view. On the top, you see the inside of the first stage. Dark a moment ago, of course, because we're seeing from the side that points down toward the 9 Merlin engines right there, which, of course, because the burn hasn't begun, still fairly pitch black, but we should see that beginning in just about 20 seconds from now. Now 6 minutes into flight, keeping an eye out for the start of that entry burn beginning.
Stage 1 FTS has safed.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
And that entry burn has begun. You see that on the right-hand side of your screen from the SpaceX views. Pete working to bring that into frame.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
Stage 2 FTS has safed.
And with that entry burn complete, sets it up for the landing burn coming up at T plus 7 minutes, 52 seconds. The speed of the Falcon 9's first stage booster dropping dramatically, as it will soon slow down to below the speed of sound. It'll be transsonic. That landing burn set to begin in less than 30 seconds.
Stage 1 transonic.
I hear that call out. The Falcon 9 first stage booster traveling below the speed of sound. Because of how far out the drone ship is from our perspective and how low on the horizon it would be, we're not going to be able to see the landing burn from our ground tracking cameras, but we will see it from the onboard cameras provided by SpaceX.
Stage 1 landing burn.
And that landing burn now underway here on your screen. We'll see the view from the drone ship coming up on the box on your right momentarily.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy.
In just about 8 minutes, 18
Stage 1
seconds
landing confirmed.
into flight, booster tail number 1073 has completed its 11th launch and landing to date. Coming up in a moment, we'll hear the call out for SECO, or second stage engine cutoff.
SECO.
And there's that call out for SECO. Now 9 minutes into flight. At this point, the SpaceX upper stage will continue on in a coast phase. Will last until T plus 53 minutes, 19 seconds, at which point there will be a quick 3-second burn, setting up the Starlink satellite deployment at T plus 1 hour, 4 minutes, and 49 seconds. As promised, want to take a moment to go back through the live chat and thank some folks who helped support the coverage this evening. Just double checking, make sure I'm not missing anyone here. I want to thank Ryan Hagler for $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Ryan. Really appreciate that. Anna Ivy, $3 super chat. And a supportive corgi animation. Thank you so much, Ann. Ben with a very generous $20 super chat saying, shout out from Cocoa Beach. Thank you so much, Ben. Really appreciate the support for the coverage tonight. And I believe those are the only ones I missed. So thank you to all of you for staying up late with us on a Tuesday night into a Wednesday morning. Again, when SpaceX does go to recover those payload fairings, this is what it's going to look like as the recovery vessel Bob does its thing, scooping those fairing halves up from the Atlantic Ocean as they have been drifting on down underneath parachutes to splash down in the Atlantic. And like the first stage, which you just saw land, it will be brought back to Port Canaveral, taken over to the Cape, refurbished, and turned around for future flights. I want to thank our moderators for helping us out in the live chat this evening, Astro Joe and Rusty Shackelford. Thank you both for helping us out this evening. Also, thanks to Pete Karstens and Chuck Briggs for some excellent tracking work there out in the field. Really appreciate that. To our launch photographer team here on the ground, Adam Bernstein, Michael Kane. Again, if you're not already following them on X, you should be. If not, though, here are their handles so you can find them both doing some launch photography tonight. So be sure to check out their pages for some photos from tonight's mission, as well as more coming on down the line. Speaking of, over at Pad 39A, do have SpaceX preparing for a commercial resupply services cargo mission to the International Space Station, CRS-29, looking to launch later this week, the evening of November 9th. Lots coming up here, as well as, of course, being that Pad 40 is a workhorse for SpaceX, that will be turned around in short order, prepared for another flight coming up in the near future. Apologies for the mic being muted there as I was mutely going through the mission stats. Briefly, just to run these through now that we've got through the mission, this was the 11th flight of the Falcon 9 booster 1073, the 270th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 76th Falcon 9 launch of 2023, the 214th Falcon booster reflight. This was the 80th SpaceX orbital launch of 2023, the 90th SpaceX orbital launch in the last 365 days, the 153rd SpaceX orbital launch from Pad 40, the 208th overall orbital launch from Pad 40, and the 61st orbital launch from Cape Canaveral in 2023. And as a matter of point, this was the first launch from the pad now that it has its new crew access arm, which, according to our sources, may come into use for the AX-3 private astronaut mission to the International Space Station, assuming that everything is fully in place and certified ahead of that launch. And that would allow both the AX-3 mission as well as the Intuitive Machines mission to the moon to go off during roughly the same time period this coming January. Back here at Pad 40, the SES 03B Power mission is set to launch from this pad coming up over the weekend for SES. And we did tell you to go ahead and follow both Michael and Adam, our ace photographers. Want to give you a quick sneak peek at what you can expect there. This is one of Michael's photos from tonight's launch. Streak shot straight up from the press site. So thanks to Michael for that. And again, check out their channels on X for more photography from tonight's mission. Do want to thank a couple more super chats that came in before we go ahead and close out. Dr. Fire Chief with a $10 super chat saying y'all do an outstanding job. Love the camera work. The kudos goes to Pete, Chuck, Adam, and Michael for that one. So thanks to you for that. Sure to pass on the praise. Flip Twister with a generous $20 super chat saying, just lost it. There it is. Thank you. My son is down there watching the launch. Oh, fantastic. Well, hopefully he didn't get too obstructed by the fog tonight, was able to see the launch just fine. And I believe there's another shot from Michael from liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket. And it looks like the transporter erector has come back up to the full upright position. Part of SpaceX's procedure for turning around the pad as quickly as possible, getting ready for future flights. Again, it's gearing up for a customer launch with SES, the first in quite some time that we've seen here from Pad 40. It's been a string of Starlink missions from this particular launch pad for a while now. It'll be nice to see a new addition come into the mix coming up over the weekend. Of course, that comes after the Commercial Resupply Services mission for NASA It's happening over here at Launch Complex 39A on November 9th. And that'll do it for tonight's mission. Really want to thank all of you for staying up late with us this evening. T plus 21 minutes, 20 seconds and counting into this flight. Again, because SpaceX is not providing telemetry data or mission audio, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up here. Be sure to follow Spaceflight Now on X for updates on satellite deployment later on this morning and for all of our coverage on future missions as well, in addition to our website, spaceflightnow.com, and right here on YouTube. So thanks as always to Stephen for helping to keep the ship upright during this broadcast. And thanks to all of you for spending some of your Tuesday night, Wednesday morning with us. I'm Will Robinson Smith. Be good to yourself, be good to others, and we will see you next time.